When I picked up the phone to ask my son Max when his wedding would be, my daughter-in-law Lena looked me right in the eye and said with a chilling smile, "Oh, we already got married yesterday." We only invited special people. The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Special people. I, who for 3 long years had paid their monthly rent of $500, bought every piece of furniture in their house and filled their refrigerator when they had nothing to eat. I was not a special person. I stood there in the living room of my own house, holding the phone as if it weighed 1,000 pounds, watching my son avoid my gaze while Lena made herself comfortable on the sofa I had bought for them. The pale pink dress I had picked out for her wedding hung uselessly in my closet, along with the new shoes and the illusion of being part of the most important day of my only son's life. I had spent $200 on that dress, thinking about how nice I would look in Max's wedding photos in which I would never appear. For weeks, I had planned every detail. I had put money aside to give them $1,000 as a wedding gift. I had called my sister Diana in Chicago to tell her the good news. I had even cleaned my house from top to bottom, thinking they might stop by to celebrate with me after the ceremony. All of that collapsed in a second with those 4 poisoned words. Only special people. Max finally lifted his gaze, his eyes flicking away almost instantly, and said in a rehearsed-sounding voice, "Mum, it was an intimate thing. Very small. Just a quick signature at the courthouse. It wasn't worth stressing you out over the details." Stressing me out? The audacity of that phrase was breathtaking. I had paid for his stress, cushioned his failures, and shielded him from the consequences of his own irresponsibility. But my presence at his greatest success was somehow too much stress. The truth, the deep, bitter truth, was that I was an embarrassment. I was the safety net, the ATM, the silent supporter they needed in the shadows, but never the proud mother they wanted in the spotlight. My husband, Max's father, had passed away 7 years ago. He was the anchor in my life, and when he left, Max was all I had. They were brilliant at weaponizing my love and my profound loneliness. The financial support started subtly, a broken-down car needing a repair, a small gap in rent after Max lost a job. But it escalated with alarming speed. First, it was the persistent $500 rent, automatically deducted from my account every month, totaling $18,000 over 3 years. Then the $3,000 Max needed for a business opportunity that evaporated within weeks, followed by another $5,000 for emergency medical bills that Lena never quite specified. Then the furniture, a $4,000 sectional sofa, a $1,500 dining set, a bedroom suite, all charged to my credit card with the promise that they would pay me back when Max's career took off. Every single time I convinced myself, this is what mothers do. I'm helping them get on their feet. Soon they'll be stable and they'll remember this. They'll appreciate me. I never asked for a penny back, genuinely. My reward was a quick hug, a fleeting smile, and the dangerous illusion that I was still vital and important to my son's life. But in their eyes, the one who pays the bills is just the hired help. And you don't invite the hired help to your private party. The next day I was completely numb. I walked through the house I had bought for myself, a refuge after my husband's death. But it no longer felt like mine. I looked at the beautiful, large, sectional sofa I had bought for them, now sitting right here in my living room. When Max and Lena moved into their apartment, they claimed they needed a temporary place to put their excess furniture, which conveniently filled my empty garage. Then the excuse evolved. The furniture was too nice to keep in a rental, so it permanently settled into my living room, my guest bedroom, and my dining room. My house had become a free luxury storage unit for a life they were living on my dime. That was the final grinding insult. I realized I didn't just buy their love. I bought their furniture and then watched them abandon it in my own house while they celebrated their happiness and new status without me. The emotional wound instantly calcified into a clear-cut mission. It was time to collect on all those unpaid loans, plus interest. I made the first call to my lawyer, Mr. Thompson. I told him everything in a detached, business-like voice that didn't sound like mine. The rent payments, the furniture, the endless emergency money. I had proof for everything. Bank transfers, itemized receipts from furniture stores, and a chronological paper trail of their blatant dependence. Max had always been too arrogant to cover his tracks, never thinking I'd challenge him. Mr. Thompson, a seasoned professional with kind eyes, was initially skeptical. Renady, proving this was a loan and not a gift is legally very difficult, especially when money passes between a parent and child. The courts often assume it's a gift of affection. But I was prepared. I pulled out the final piece of evidence, the one I had refused 2 months prior. Max's last request for $10,000 to buy a small piece of investment land. I had told him, "I truly can't, Max. I need that money for my own future. My savings are depleted." And he had replied in a text, which I printed out and handed to Mr. Thompson. "Mom, you don't need to worry about your future. We will take care of you. We are your family. Your only family. It's an investment in your well-being, too." The lawyer's face changed. He smiled slowly. "That statement changes everything, Renardi. It explicitly establishes an obligation and an expectation of care in exchange for your sacrifice. They promised to support you and are now actively excluding you. This is a clear case of material breach of promise and financial exploitation. Let's itemize your losses, Renardi." Over the next week, the number grew. The rent, $18,000, the furniture, $7,500, the car payments, $9,000, the investments, and various cash transfers, $38,000. The grand total came to a staggering $72,500. It was my entire financial cushion, my security for old age, spent to buy a fleeting moment of my son's attention. I sat in Mr. Thompson's office, looking at the number, feeling a cold, dead certainty. The lawyer worked swiftly. We filed a formal demand letter, comprehensive and precise, complete with all the evidence of their dependence and Max's documented broken promise of care. We requested full repayment within 30 days or threatened a lawsuit for material financial exploitation and unjust enrichment. When Max and Lena received the demand, the phone calls started. Not calls of love or apology, but pure, terrifying, unadulterated fury. "Are you insane, Mom? You can't sue your own son." "What about family?" Max screamed, his voice cracking with outrage, not hurt. I listened, calm and quiet, the phone resting on the leather of my armchair. "What about family, Max?" I asked, my voice steady, like cold steel. "Family doesn't exclude the mother who paid your way from the most important day of your life. Family doesn't lie to the one who loves them most for 3 years straight. You and Lena taught me what special people means. It means people who value you for who you are, not for what you can provide." Lena snatched the phone, her voice immediately switching from sweet manipulation to utter venom. "If you do this, you will never see us again. You will never see your grandchildren. We'll make sure of it." "Grandchildren?" I laughed, a sharp, cold sound that surprised even me. "You only use me for money, Lena. I highly doubt you would ever trust me alone with a grandchild, because that would mean a whole new obligation you couldn't control. Save your threats. They don't work anymore. I'm done." I hung up. The weeks of utter silence that followed were the most profoundly peaceful of my life. The constant nagging anxiety of the next emergency evaporated. My house felt like mine again, not their abandoned storage unit. My fear of being alone was replaced by the clarity of being truly free. The lawyer negotiated the repayment. Max and Lena, faced with irrefutable evidence and the looming threat of a public lawsuit, which would ruin Max's fledgling career, agreed to a structured settlement. They had to sell some of the more expensive items they had bought with my money, and, most humiliatingly, secure a significant bank loan to pay me back a substantial portion of the debt. They lost the lease on their comfortable, expensive apartment and had to move into a tiny, less-than-ideal place outside the city centre. For the first time in their adult lives, they were facing true financial adversity they had to solve entirely themselves. This was the lesson my generosity never allowed them to learn. A year passed. The repayment was staggered, but it was consistent. I hadn't received a card, a call, or a forced visit from Max or Lena. That complete final absence was the greatest gift of all. I took the first substantial check I received, money I had already written off, and decided to finally live the life my husband and I had planned before he died. I sold the large, empty family home that had become a prison of memory and expectation. I bought a beautiful, bright condo downtown. But before I started my new life, I settled my soul. I donated half of the recovered money to local organizations that protect the elderly from financial and emotional family abuse. It was my way of taking my painful lesson and using it to help others who had suffered the same cruel, devastating realization. True love never has a price, and freedom is never too expensive. With the other half, I began to live. I started traveling, ticking off destinations I had only dreamed of in guidebooks. I traveled through Europe, took art history classes at the local university, and joined volunteer groups. I started knitting again, a hobby I had abandoned for decades, simply because I had the time and the peace of mind. I never heard from Max and Lena again. I heard from a former neighbour that they had to move to an even smaller apartment, and that Lena had found a full-time, demanding job for the first time in years. Perhaps the adversity would teach them what my generosity never could: the value of honest work, genuine independence, and the high cost of burning bridges. Some nights, when I look out at the city lights from my new balcony, I think about the woman I was a year ago. Fearful, manipulated, constantly believing I had to buy love and companionship. That woman is gone. She is dead. And in her place, someone has been born who has finally understood a fundamental, undeniable truth. True love is given freely, and the most important person I have to love and protect is myself. My name is Renadi. I am 72 years old, and I am finally, truly free. If you liked my story and the lesson I learned, please consider supporting me by making a donation so I can continue sharing these powerful true life stories. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you have done in my place? I would love to hear your opinion, your advice, or your own similar stories. Please share them with me in the comments below. I'm always curious about what you all think. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you. With heartfelt greetings. Until next time.